Sophia, I'm leaving. Don't you have anything you want to say to me? On a hospital bed at Jing City Xia Hospital, 85-year-old Ethan said weakly to his wife beside him. Sophia was also 85 now, wearing reading glasses, her hair gray and her face lined with wrinkles. But the poise between her brows still told the world how beautiful she had been in her youth. Still, Sophia just sat at the bedside, lips pressed tight, saying nothing. Silence spread between them. The only sound in the room was the ticking of the monitors. Seeing Sophia remain silent, Ethan had to speak again. If you have nothing to say to me, then I have something to say to you. What did you say? Sophia finally spoke. Ethan took a deep breath, a simple action that brought on a violent bout of coughing. After he calmed down, Ethan said, "We've been married for 60 years. In those 60 years, did you ever love me?" Sophia was momentarily stunned by the question. She clenched her fingers and answered in that cool tone Ethan knew all too well, "No." Ethan let out a long sigh, a rueful smile of relief appearing on his face. "Is that so? Are you still mad at me? Mad that back then I insisted on marrying you no matter what?" "Yes," Sophia replied coldly as ever. Memories surged like a tide. Ethan and Sophia were childhood sweethearts. Their parents had known each other before they were born. They grew up together, arguing and bickering for as long as they could remember. At 3, they competed over who had more little red stickers at kindergarten. At 7, they competed over who had the best grades. At 15, they competed over who received the most love letters. At 18, by a twist of fate, they both got into the same university, the same major, the same class, and resumed their endless quarrels and contests. Until the day they turned 25, when their parents announced they wanted to arrange a marriage between them. Sophia refused on the spot, while Ethan declared he would marry no one but her. But under their parents' forceful matchmaking, the two eventually wed. Even after marriage, they still quarreled frequently. Having a child did nothing to ease the situation. Ethan felt no anger, no pain, only resignation about the outcome and acceptance of the present. "Sophia, I'm really leaving. Could you say a few kind words to comfort me before I go?" Ethan's voice grew ever weaker. He felt life slowly slipping away from him. Only then did Sophia stand up and take Ethan's wrinkled hands. Her palms were warm and dry, but Ethan's hands were freezing cold. Sophia turned her head away, unwilling to look him in the eye. "If you're leaving, then hurry up and go. Don't waste time here." Ethan laughed a few times, bitterly, then let out a long sigh. "Can't you say something nice to soothe me, even if you're just lying?" "No." Sophia's tone remained cold, but her hand involuntarily tightened on his. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the last of his life constantly slipping away. He couldn't even get up now. Speaking was a struggle. "Sophia, if there's a next life, let's not be together." Having forced out that sentence with all his strength, Ethan finally closed his eyes and sank into a void of darkness. After an unknown amount of time, Ethan opened his eyes again. The dazzling sunlight made him squint instinctively. He looked around in confusion and found himself in a familiar villa living room, sitting on a soft leather sofa. Is this heaven or hell? Ethan wondered confusedly. Why does it feel so familiar? He looked down at his hands that should have been covered in wrinkles and age spots, but now they were smooth and tender, full of strength. He touched his face again. The skin was firm, without any sign of sagging. At that moment, Ethan noticed several people still seated on the nearby sofa. There were Sophia's parents, Daniel and Emily, and his own parents, George and Margaret. Only they all looked young, maybe in their 40s or 50s. Ethan's gaze drifted to the side again, and at that look he froze. It was Sophia, 25-year-old Sophia. She wore a pale blue dress, her long black hair draped over her shoulders, her skin white as jade, brows like willows and eyes like a phoenix, bright-eyed and pearly-toothed. Right now, she was pouting, showing her displeasure at the topic of conversation. When she noticed Ethan looking at her, she snorted softly and then turned her head aside. "I think having the two youngsters together is pretty good," Daniel said at that moment. "I also quite like Ethan. This remark was a revelation to Ethan. He instantly realized. He had been reborn back to when he was 25, and today was the day both parents had proposed the match. Ethan, what do you think? George turned his head and asked. At this point, everyone's gaze focused on Ethan, expecting his answer. However, Ethan had already gone through a marriage with Sophia in his previous life, and this time he didn't want to repeat the same mistake. I think, let's just forget it. I don't want to be with Sophia. His tone was calm, yet extremely firm. The moment his words fell, the entire living room went dead silent. The four elders looked at one another, clearly not expecting that answer. The most shocked was Sophia. She spun around, her eyes fixed on Ethan. What do you mean? What do you mean you don't want to be with me? Sophia stood up, speaking with some anger. But Ethan simply looked at her calmly, looking at the woman he had loved his whole life, yet had never heard say she loved him. And he said softly, I mean it literally, I don't think we're right for each other. There's no need to force it. Those words were like lighting a powder keg. Sophia immediately exploded. You. Her finger pointed at Ethan, her chest heaving violently. How dare you reject me? What's wrong with me? However, Ethan didn't want to answer. After all, he had been reborn. There was no way he could say he had been married to Sophia in his past life. Sophia, mind your attitude. Sit down at once. Daniel snapped. Only after Sophia sat down did Daniel turn to look at Ethan, his tone much more gentle. Ethan, are you still having some reservations? I remember you said you quite liked Sophia. Ethan shook his head. I don't have any concerns, Uncle Daniel. I just think things forced don't turn out sweet. I can see Sophia doesn't want to be with me, and when you asked me, I wasn't thinking along those lines. Who said I don't want to? Sophia blurted out, pointing at Ethan. I'm telling you, Ethan, if you don't want to marry me, fine. I still refuse to marry anyone but you. As long as I'm here, don't think you can be with other women. Those words stunned everyone present, including Sophia herself. Her lips parted slightly and hadn't closed. Both parents looked at her in surprise. Ethan was stunned too. He had never seen this side of Sophia. In a previous life, she had fiercely opposed this and called him a toad wanting to eat a swan. Sophia seemed to realize she had said something outrageous. Her face flushed to her ears, but she still forced on that haughty expression. What are you looking at? Anyway, with me here, don't think you can be with other women. Margaret laughed to smooth things over. Look at these two kids, still bickering like when they were little. I think it's fate. Emily echoed. Yes, Sophia is usually so cold to everyone else. Only around Ethan does she act so lively. Ethan inwardly bitterly smiled. Sophia's words from his previous life on her deathbed were still vivid in his mind. How about this? Let the two kids try getting along for a while, build up some feelings first, and we can talk about marriage later. Daniel proposed a solution. Fine. Sophia agreed eagerly, not giving Ethan a chance to refuse. All right, then it's settled. I think it's a good idea too. George chimed in agreement. And so, before Ethan could react, both sets of parents had reached a consensus. Ethan hurriedly voiced his opinion, attempting a final struggle. But George interrupted as soon as the words left his mouth. All right, it's getting late. We should head back. Let the two kids sort out the rest themselves. No sooner had he finished than George and Margaret stood up and prepared to leave. Seeing this, Ethan also rose, ready to follow. Ethan, why are you coming along? Margaret asked at that moment, an ill-timed question. Are we going back? Ethan said, exchanging wide-eyed looks. George and Margaret exchanged glances, both seemingly stunned by that remark. Aren't you going to keep talking with Sophia? Margaret asked, her tone carrying a clear hint. Ethan glanced at Sophia. She was sitting on the sofa with her arms crossed, looking sulky, but her eyes kept darting his way. Nothing much to talk about. Let's leave it at that. Ethan said coolly, then turned to leave. Ethan, stop right there. Sophia sprang up, her voice clearly angry. What do you mean? Do you dislike me that much? Ethan gave a soft and didn't look back. George and Margaret also felt awkward. They'd never seen Ethan like this before. Seeing the situation, they hurriedly turned back to comfort Sophia, who looked a bit wronged. George, Sophia, Ethan might just not be able to accept it at the moment. Don't take it to heart. Margaret, yes, Sophia, mainly because we didn't prepare him mentally in advance. However, Sophia didn't care at all about what they said, her eyes fixed on Ethan, who had already stepped out the door. You idiot, she muttered softly, her voice barely audible. After returning from Sophia's house to their own, George and Margaret began whispering to Ethan's ear again. Ethan, what's gotten into you today? Aren't you usually pretty close with Sophia? Margaret spoke first. Yeah, when I asked you earlier what you thought of Sophia, you said she was pretty good. How come today you suddenly don't want to? George added. Ethan was slumped on the couch, exhaling a long breath before saying, It's nothing in particular. I just simply feel the two of us aren't compatible. How are you not compatible? You and Sophia have played together since you were kids. Both families know each other. And after marriage you can visit more often. We can help out too, Margaret asked. But Ethan was as stubborn as a rock this time. No matter how much his mother praised things, it was useless. If he didn't want to, he didn't want to. I just feel we're not compatible. Don't try to set us up anymore. Saying that, Ethan got up from the sofa. He wanted to find an excuse to escape quickly. Otherwise his parents wouldn't let it go easily. I'm heading to the office first. I have things to do, Ethan said as he moved toward the entryway. Watching their son's determined back, George and Margaret looked at each other and sighed helplessly, deciding they'd work on his mindset slowly in the future. After arriving at the office, Ethan had barely sat at his desk when his phone rang. Hello. Ethan picked up the phone. Mr. Ethan, Miss Sophia stormed off just now, Mia Clark at the front desk said, her voice tinged with obvious urgency and nervousness. Ethan felt an immediate headache. All right, I know. He pressed his temples helplessly, then hung up. No sooner had he set the phone down than a commotion sounded outside the office. As Ethan rose, the office door was thrust open. Ethan! At this moment, Sophia stood at the office door, panting as she stared at him, her chest heaving violently, whether from anger or exhaustion. No one knew. Sophia, you can't just barge in like this. Her assistant Luna Davis behind her tried to reason. At the word, Sophia immediately turned, giving the assistant a fierce glare. What business is it of yours that I argued with my husband? Are you sleeping with him or something? Sophia's voice was loud, leaving the assistant stunned and frozen in place. Seeing this, Ethan hurried forward to soothe her. All right, it's fine. Go on and get back to work. His voice was gentle and tinged with a bit of apology. But that sentence made Sophia even more furious. She spun around and shouted at Ethan. You're still covering for her? I knew I wasn't wrong. Have you two been seeing each other for a while? You just want to ditch me and replace me with someone else, right? Ethan didn't get angry. He only waved his hand to signal the female assistant to leave first, then pulled Sophia into the office and closed the door behind them. Sophia crossed her arms and tilted her head, putting on a perfectly angry expression. But on closer look, the corners of her eyes were slightly red, as if she were holding something back. What are you doing here? Ethan asked first. Can I come? Sophia replied. Ethan sighed helplessly, then added, So what did you come to see me about? Sophia tossed her hair and said, Of course to see which little vixen stole your soul. We're not in any boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, let alone husband and wife. Ethan said somewhat coldly. What do I have to do with you? Sophia's face flushed with anger at his words. She stepped forward sharply and shouted at Ethan. That's not allowed either. In any case, don't think about finding another woman. You can only marry me in this lifetime. Ethan watched her quietly, watching this familiar yet strange Sophia. In the previous life, she had never so plainly expressed the desire to be with him, always hiding her true feelings with indifference and quarrels. In that moment, a ripple stirred in Ethan's heart, but it was immediately pressed down by memories of the past life. He couldn't repeat the same mistakes, couldn't go through that marriage again. Sophia, we're not compatible, and I don't like you. So stop pestering me. At those words, a mist of moisture instantly clouded Sophia's eyes. She blinked rapidly to force back the tears that were about to spill out. How do you know we're not compatible if we haven't tried? She said stubbornly, pouting. However, Ethan had been reborn and naturally knew how things would end up with her. No need, I don't want to try. Let's leave it like this. Sophia panted, looking at Ethan with eyes full of anger. She reached out, pointed at him, and shouted, "You, do you really dislike me that much?" However, Ethan merely nodded slightly and said, like a drop of water falling into a lake without a ripple. That calm reply completely broke Sophia's last nerve. She let go of all restraint, pointed at Ethan, and shouted, "Don't you regret it?" After saying that, Sophia covered her mouth, and tears finally welled up and flowed out. She ran out of the office crying. Ethan stood where he was, watching her departing back, his heart a tangle of emotions. It would be a lie to say he had no feelings for Sophia. After all, a 60-year marriage from his previous life couldn't be completely discarded in a single day. No one could do that. But he had to restrain those feelings and tell himself not to repeat the same mistakes. He must. 8:24 p.m., Ethan walked out of the office. Maybe to avoid his parents nagging, he had stayed late at work a bit longer, and before he knew it, it was this late. Almost everyone had left the office building. Only a few people working late into the night remained. Ethan rubbed his aching brow and took the elevator straight down to the basement parking level. Just as he was about to drive home, he saw a familiar figure beside his car. It was Sophia. She hadn't gone home, but had been waiting by Ethan's car. She knew Ethan would come back to drive, so she hadn't left. Sophia was leaning against Ethan's car door, head bowed as if asleep. When she heard footsteps approaching, she immediately lifted her head. Seeing this, Ethan could only walk over helplessly. "Why haven't you gone home yet?" Sophia's eyes were still a bit red and swollen, but she still wore a stubborn expression. "It's nothing. I just wanted to see when you'd get off. Then I'm getting off work now. You can go home." Ethan issued the dismissal and then prepared to get into the car. Seeing this, Sophia hurriedly went around to the passenger door, ready to get in with Ethan. However, Ethan stopped his movement to enter, dropped his hand from the door handle, and then looked at Sophia. "What exactly do you want?" Sophia looked aggrieved, somewhat indignant as she said, "Why are you being so cold? You're not even letting me ride in the car. Aren't you driving? The car is at the 4S shop for maintenance." Sophia answered quickly, but her eyes flickered. Ethan, looking at Sophia's guilty expression, hardly needed to think. She obviously hadn't driven herself here. In the end, he couldn't bear it and didn't continue to stop her from opening the car door. As soon as Sophia sat in the car, she turned on the seat heater. She had been standing alone in the underground garage in a skirt for so long that her hands and feet were already trembling. "Here." Ethan handed her the jacket he was wearing. Sophia stared at the coat, froze for a moment, then took it and immediately put it on. The coat still carried Ethan's warmth and a faint smell of detergent, making her involuntarily take a deep breath. But when she noticed there were other people nearby, she straightened up at once and stopped what she was doing. The car slowly pulled away, and Sophia idly started playing with her phone. When the car reached the underground garage exit, Sophia tapped the navigation on the central display. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked. "Going to eat." Sophia said naturally, feeling nothing odd about it. "You're not eating yet?" "I saw you hadn't eaten either," she said with perfect justification, clearly timing it to Ethan's habit of eating after work. "I'll eat at home." Sophia froze for a moment, clearly not expecting Ethan to refuse. He usually wouldn't. But she quickly shifted and went along with it. "Eating at your place is fine too. Let's go. Don't you have food at home?" "No." Sophia answered so quickly that Ethan didn't know how to respond. Ethan sighed, then started the car and drove home. Along the way, Sophia kept reapplying makeup and taking photos. Anyone who didn't know better would think she was on a date. Ethan drove steadily, and before long they arrived at the villa. Sophia subconsciously smoothed her clothes and got out of the car with a smile. She stood at the door, waiting for Ethan to park, then followed him toward the villa's entrance. Margaret was watching TV on the sofa, while George was checking the news on his phone. Hearing the door open, they both turned their heads. When Margaret saw Sophia behind Ethan, Her eyes lit up, and she hurried to greet her. Sophia's here. Come in, come in. Margaret enthusiastically took Sophia's hand. When she noticed Sophia was still wearing Ethan's coat, her smile deepened. George put down his phone at that moment and walked over with a smile. Sophia, have you eaten? If not, come eat with Ethan. Sophia glanced at Ethan with the air of a victor, then obediently nodded. Thank you, Uncle George and Aunt Margaret. Sorry to have troubled you today. No trouble at all. We're family. You must be hungry. Sophia, go eat first, Margaret said as she ushered Sophia toward the dining room. Ethan followed behind without a word. The table was already set with food, all reheated after Ethan came off work. Once they sat down, Margaret kept serving Sophia. Is there anything else you want to eat? Auntie will make it now. Sophia hurriedly waved her hand. No need, Auntie. This is enough. It's quite delicious. If it's tasty, then eat more, Margaret said as she continued to serve Sophia, completely leaving Ethan aside. Ethan silently finished the rice in his bowl quickly, then got up and walked toward the living room. Sophia glanced at Ethan's back, and a surge of disappointment immediately welled up inside her. After dinner, Sophia and Margaret chatted in the living room again. After some time, Ethan suddenly said, "It's getting late. I'll take you home." Ethan knew that if they kept chatting like this, Sophia would linger and not leave. Sophia obviously froze for a moment, then put on a pitiful look toward Margaret, hoping Margaret would say she could stay over tonight. But Ethan wasn't having any of it. He picked up Sophia's bag from the sofa and started to leave, making it clear she had to go home tonight. Seeing this, Margaret said no more, only reminding the two to be careful on the road. They rode in silence the whole way. Sophia leaned against the car window, her heart full of conflicted feelings. Before long, the car stopped in front of Sophia's villa. But she didn't get out. She simply sat frozen in her seat, completely still. "We're here," Ethan reminded her. Sophia seemed to move slightly, but still didn't get out. "We're here." Ethan raised his voice and called again. Sophia only moved after hearing that, opened the car door and got out. As she was about to close the car door, Ethan shouted at that moment, "Your coat." Sophia was still wearing Ethan's jacket and hadn't taken it off. She looked at Ethan with some grievance, clutched the jacket tighter. "I hate you." Her voice was very soft, with a hint of choking. Then she ran straight back home without returning the jacket to Ethan. Watching her run back, Ethan could only heave a helpless sigh and then left. The next day around noon, Ethan had just finished a meeting and was about to go to the cafeteria to eat when another commotion arose outside the office. Knock, knock, knock. The office door was suddenly knocked, and then Sophia walked in, still carrying a paper bag. "Why are you here?" Ethan spoke first. Sophia pressed her lips together, tilted her head slightly, and said, "Nothing much. It's just, your clothes are washed. I brought them to you." Ethan was momentarily stunned, then said, "Just leave them on the couch." Sophia set the paper bag on the sofa and walked over to Ethan's desk. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked again. "Have you eaten?" Sophia said. Ethan hesitated for a moment. "No." Then he said, "I've eaten." "You just came from a meeting. How did you eat?" Sophia stared at him. "I ate before the meeting." Ethan felt a little guilty under her gaze. "Doesn't your cafeteria open at 11:30? Sophia asked again. "The cafeteria opened early today." "Ethan." Sophia stepped forward, slapped the table with both hands, and said, "Do you not want to eat with me?" Ethan looked at Sophia, who seemed both angry and a little aggrieved, and for a moment didn't know how to respond. Perhaps noticing his own loss of composure, Sophia withdrew her hands, straightened up, and said, "I've already booked a table. It can't be canceled. I'm really tired today and don't want to go out. Then I'll order takeout and have it delivered." Ethan looked at Sophia with a serious expression and finally sighed helplessly. "Where to?" At his words, Sophia's eyes instantly lit up, with none of the earlier anger showing. "Come with me, I'll drive." Ethan tidied himself up casually and followed Sophia to the underground garage. Maybe he was really a bit tired today, because as soon as he got in the car, he closed his eyes to rest. After a while, the car stopped in front of a restaurant. Ethan froze for a moment when he saw the sign. This was a place he often came to, big portions, good food, and not expensive. After they married, Ethan had even bought the recipes for a few dishes he liked from the restaurant owner. Unfortunately, no matter how the housekeeper tried, she could never reproduce the restaurant's flavors. "What are you standing there for?" "Let's go," Sophia reminded him, and only then did Ethan go in. Sophia had reserved a private room on the second floor, and hardly had they sat down before the dishes arrived. Since Ethan had to return to the office that afternoon, they didn't eat for very long. On the way back to the company, Sophia suddenly spoke up. "Ethan, what's up?" Ethan replied somewhat perfunctorily. "Marry me." "No." Hearing Ethan refuse so quickly, Sophia's tone involuntarily grew aggrieved again. "Why?" "There is no why." Sophia grunted twice, then added, "Are you still mad at me?" "When have I ever been mad at you?" "You still say you're not mad? This is how you are when you're angry." Hearing that, Ethan couldn't help but give a self-mocking laugh and asked, "What am I like when I'm angry?" Sophia, as if she'd found an outlet for her emotions, poured out a list of Ethan's angry behaviors like spilling beans from a bamboo tube. "When you get mad, you act like this. You don't tell me anything. When I ask you something, you say it's fine. It's nothing. You like to speak sarcastically. You always keep to yourself." Sophia said a lot about him, many details Ethan hadn't even noticed. Ethan stared out the window and listened quietly. For the first time, he felt a change in his view of Sophia. She really did seem different in this lifetime. In the blink of an eye, it was the weekend, and the company was closed. Sophia came every day during those days, but it was mostly like throwing herself at a cold reception. Still, she never tired of it and would come again the next day. Once at the office, she went nowhere, just sat in Ethan's office until the end of the day, and then had Ethan take her home. At 9 on Saturday morning, Ethan was still asleep when suddenly he was awakened by the ringing of a phone. Phone ringing. Ethan fished his phone out from under the pillow, swiped, and answered. "Hello? Hello? Ethan, are you awake?" Hearing Sophia's voice, Ethan paused for a moment, pondering whether to respond. After a long silence, he finally said, "What's up? Will you spend my birthday with me today?" "Wasn't your birthday on the 6th last month?" Ethan responded groggily. "Last month, I celebrated the lunar calendar birthday. This time is the solar calendar birthday." Sophia said in a playful tone, "I'm going on a business trip to Hooching today." Ethan made up a lie offhand. "Really?" Sophia lengthened the syllable, clearly unconvinced. Just then, Ethan's bedroom door was suddenly knocked on. "Knock, knock, knock." Before Ethan could respond, the door was opened and Sophia walked in, tada, tada, tada. At the sight of Sophia, Ethan instinctively pulled the blanket over his head, as if resigned, not wanting to see her, especially when sleeping in on the weekend. But Sophia had already come to the bedside and yanked Ethan's blanket off. "Don't sleep in, the weather's so nice today." Ethan hadn't even been holding the covers. With a little tug from Sophia, the whole duvet was whipped off. Sophia suddenly went quiet, her cheeks flushing slightly as she glanced to the side. Ethan didn't react at first. Only when Sophia cleared her throat twice did he realize he was wearing nothing but underwear. After all, in their previous life they had been husband and wife, and Ethan hadn't immediately remembered that they weren't in that kind of relationship now. "I'll go out first. Put your clothes on before you come out." Having said that, Sophia slipped to the door and closed it behind her. Ethan lay on the bed like a deflated balloon, motionless. After a while, Sophia's voice came from outside. "Are you ready? Aunt Margaret is calling you down for breakfast." Hearing that, Ethan resigned himself and got moving, dressing, and going downstairs. By then, Sophia was already sitting at the table having breakfast. After washing up, Ethan sat down beside her and began eating. Halfway through, Sophia suddenly asked, "Is it good?" "What's wrong? Just tell me whether it's good or not." "It's good. What's the matter?" Ethan didn't quite understand why she was asking all of a sudden. "Oof. Of course it is. I spent quite a bit of money buying the recipe for this bowl of noodles," Sophia said confidently, like a child who had done something nice and was waiting to be praised. At the words, Ethan froze. He looked down at the noodles in the bowl, his thoughts drifting back to the time in his previous life when they had just received their marriage certificate. Back then, Sophia sulked, threw tantrums, refused to sleep with Ethan, sent him to the guest room, and even refused to hold a wedding. She never left the house. When Ethan came home from work, she showed him a cold face. Until one day, Sophia unexpectedly caught a fever, nearly 38 degrees Celsius, lying in bed as if she were burning into a fool. In a daze, she called Ethan and slurred that she wasn't feeling well. Ethan rushed back from the office and even called 120 on the way. Fortunately, it wasn't serious. Sophia had 4 fluids for 2 days in the hospital and was able to be discharged. After that incident, Sophia's attitude toward Ethan gradually improved, and she even offered to cook for him. But Sophia had been pampered since childhood and always had a housekeeper doing the cooking. She tried for several days, but still couldn't even make a simple, clear noodle soup properly. One morning, excitedly, Sophia told Ethan to try the noodles she had made. When Ethan found the flavor was much better than before, he sincerely said they were good. Not long after, Ethan discovered a pot of noodle broth at home. Upon asking, he learned that the broth had been bought from a noodle shop and Sophia had merely cooked the noodles. Although Ethan said it didn't matter, Sophia, exposed, never offered to cook for him again. And the taste of this bowl of noodles at this moment really resembled that earlier bowl. Sophia. Ethan looked up at her. Sophia also put down her chopsticks, lifted her head, and met Ethan's gaze. What's wrong? The instant their eyes met, a thought flashed through Ethan's mind. If he could be reborn, what about her? But the thought was quickly suppressed. Who would believe such a thing if he said out loud? Where do you want to spend your birthday today? Sophia's eyes lit up instantly. Aren't you supposed to be on a business trip today? Let someone else go. Then I want to go to Universal Studios. My annual pass hasn't expired yet, Sophia said excitedly. When Ethan heard going to Universal Studios, he was momentarily stunned. He recalled that in his previous life, Sophia would get an annual pass every time she visited an amusement park like this. In a whole year, she'd end up going only twice. Once when the pass was first issued, and a second time when it was about to expire. Sometimes not even that second time. Ethan still nodded slightly. Okay. At Sophia's urging, Ethan quickly finished breakfast and accompanied her to Universal Studios. Sophia spent the entire day wandering around, buying food and drinks, and trying almost every ride. Ethan could only do his best to accompany her without complaint. They kept at it until 7 p.m., and Sophia had already switched from heels to flats. I think there's a light show tonight, Sophia said. Then let's go. Ethan replied weakly, but still followed Sophia toward the Harry Potter area. By now, a considerable crowd had gathered below the castle, with more and more people coming. I kind of need to use the restroom, Sophia suddenly said. Then go ahead, I'll hold your things, Ethan said, reaching out to take her bag and the other items. Sophia didn't refuse. After tossing everything to Ethan, she turned and headed for the restroom. After a while, shouts rang out from beyond the crowd. Curious, Ethan looked up toward where people were gathering. 4 or 5 security guards were escorting a woman in a wedding dress slowly inward. The gown sparkled under the lights, the skirt swaying gently with her steps. Surrounding visitors took out their phones to take pictures, all guessing whether this was a special performance arranged by the park. Just as Ethan and the other visitors were making way for the guards and the woman stopped in front of Ethan. Ethan froze for a moment, and then realized the woman was Sophia. She wore a pure white wedding gown, a veil draped lightly over her shoulders, her face made up delicately, and she held a bouquet of fresh flowers. Sophia? You. Before Ethan could finish speaking, Sophia suddenly cut him off. Ethan, I've thought about this for a very long time. I know this may be sudden, but I've made up my mind. After saying that, she handed the bouquet to Ethan and called out loudly, Ethan, will you marry me? The crowd around them instantly burst into louder exclamations, cheering, say yes, say yes. They each took out their phones to capture this happy moment. Ethan, however, fell silent. His mind was somewhat in turmoil. Seeing that he still didn't speak, Sophia continued. Ethan, I know I used to be willful and had a bad temper, always giving you the cold shoulder, but during this time I've thought it through. I shouldn't keep hurting someone who loves me. So, can you forgive my past selfishness and be with me? Sophia's voice was a little choked, awaiting Ethan's answer. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Ethan. The surrounding cheers gradually subsided as everyone waited for his reply. Ethan hesitated for a long time, the image of that day by the hospital bed replaying in his mind, and finally said, I'm sorry. His voice was very soft, barely audible to Sophia alone, yet it struck her heart like a heavy hammer. The smile on Sophia's face froze instantly, the expectation in her eyes turning into incredulous shock, then slowly replaced by disappointment. She stood there stunned, holding the bouquet of flowers, not knowing whom to give them to. At that moment, the castle's light show also began, colorful fireworks scattering across the castle walls. But beneath the castle, the scene was strangely desolate. The surrounding crowd sensed something was wrong. The cheers gradually stopped, replaced by whispers and puzzled looks. Ethan watched the light in Sophia's eyes gutter out little by little, and his heart ached along with it. After a while, Sophia threw the flowers into Ethan's arms, lifted her skirt, and ran away crying. Ethan stood in place, holding the rejected bouquet, watching Sophia disappear into the crowd. The castle lights remained dazzling, but his heart was unbearably heavy. The surrounding visitors slowly dispersed, occasionally casting curious or sympathetic glances. He knew he had broken Sophia's heart this time, but oddly he didn't know whether that was good or bad. That matter had been over for more than a month, and Ethan's life gradually returned to normal. During that time, Sophia hadn't come to see him again. No messages, no calls, not even any updates on her foreign social media circle. Margaret asked him a few times whether he and Sophia had had a falling out, but Ethan only gave an awkward smile each time, offering neither confirmation nor denial. Until one afternoon, while Ethan was at work, his phone suddenly rang. Seeing the caller ID read Emily, Ethan felt an inexplicable nervousness rise within him. Hello, Aunt Emily, Ethan said, a little tense. Ethan, what have you been up to lately? Emily's tone was as gentle as ever, as if she still didn't know what had happened between him and Sophia. Nothing much lately, just going to work every day and that sort of thing. Ah, I see. It's been a while since I've seen you. Annie wanted to ask if you have time to come over for a meal. Although Emily didn't say it, Ethan knew it was certainly because of Sophia. Ethan originally wanted to refuse, but somehow, inexplicably, he agreed. Okay, I'll come after work today. After hanging up the phone, Ethan felt conflicted. He didn't know how he would face Sophia later. Over the past month, he had replayed two scenes in his mind again and again. One trying to awaken his feelings for Sophia, the other warning him not to repeat the same mistakes. He waited it out until after work, then drove quickly to Sophia's house. Emily opened the door, and when she saw Ethan, her face immediately lit up with a warm smile, making Ethan feel even more embarrassed. Ethan's here. Come in, come in. Dinner will be ready in a bit. Have a seat first. Ethan nodded politely and followed Emily into the living room, his gaze unconsciously sweeping around, searching for a familiar figure. Sophia is upstairs. Emily saw through his little thought and reminded him. Ethan nodded awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Ethan, could you go upstairs and call Sophia down for dinner? Emily suddenly said. Ethan was stunned for a moment, then agreed. Okay. Ethan, a little uneasy, walked to the door of Sophia's bedroom. After hesitating for a moment, he knocked lightly twice. After a while, there was no response from inside, so Ethan knocked a bit harder twice more. He waited again, but Sophia still didn't answer. Seeing this, Ethan could only call out once. Sophia? There was a slight rustling sound from inside, but still no reply. Can I come in? Ethan called again. This time it was quiet inside. Ethan said, I'm coming in, and slowly opened the door. The door was fully open when, before Ethan could see clearly, A pillow flew over and smacked into his face. What are you doing here? Did I say you could come in? Sophia sat on the bed, her hair in disarray, one strap of her pajama slipping off, glaring at Ethan in full anger. Aunt Emily asked me to call you to come eat. Ethan held the pillow, standing frozen in the doorway. I'm not eating. Hurry up and get out. Sophia responded without any courtesy. Ethan still stood at the door, with no intention of leaving. Seeing this, Sophia pulled the quilt over herself and lay back down. Go if you want to. I don't care anymore. Ethan sighed softly, tiptoed into the room, and put the pillow back. He moved a stool from beside the desk and sat at the edge of the bed. Ethan opened his mouth, unsure how to begin. The person under the quilt seemed to sense someone by the bed, curled up even tighter, but never turned over. Sophia, I'm sorry. What are you sorrying me for? I don't remember. Sophia replied immediately. Ethan was silent for a moment, then continued. I shouldn't have rejected you in front of so many people. What? Hearing that answer, Sophia instantly erupted, throwing off the covers and sitting up. If you're here today to say that, then just go back. I forgive you. You don't need to feel sorry to me. Sophia's eyes were red, as if she might cry at any moment. Sophia, it's not what I meant. Ethan hurried to explain, but he didn't know how to put it. What do you mean, what do you? Sophia cut him off harshly, then demanded, Ethan, I'm asking you. Have you ever liked me, even if only a little bit? Ethan sat up at her words, his eyes clearing. He didn't answer, but instead countered, What about you? Have you ever liked me? Who would like? She stopped halfway, then corrected herself. Of course I like you. You're the person I like the most. After saying that, she turned her head to the side, avoiding Ethan's gaze, her earlobes slowly reddening. Ethan was stunned. He hadn't expected Sophia to answer so directly. The two fell silent at that moment. Ethan hadn't heard those words even on his deathbed in his past life, yet he was hearing them now. You still haven't said whether you like me or not. Sophia whispered. Ethan hadn't finished when Emily suddenly called out, interrupting him. Come downstairs for dinner. Ethan immediately swallowed his words. Let's go eat first. Aunt Emily is calling us. But Sophia remained unmoved, just watching Ethan without speaking. Seeing this, Ethan had to muster his feelings again and said solemnly, I like you too. Sophia's cheeks slowly took on a hint of redness, and her voice softened considerably. I'll change my clothes and come out. Okay. At the dining table, Daniel was trying to stop Emily from continuing to call out, don't say anything. Maybe the two kids just had a little quarrel. What if they've already made up, and you interrupt them with one word? Emily waved her hand to tell Daniel not to interfere. Sigh. I know. You don't have to tell me. You weren't home that day. You don't know how Sophia was crying. If I don't put a little obstacle in her way, she always thinks my daughter is easy to bully. No sooner had she finished speaking than footsteps sounded on the stairs. Emily immediately put on a kind smile, and Daniel straightened his expression, pretending nothing had happened. They walked into the dining room one after the other. Sophia had changed into a light blue loungewear set, her hair casually tied back. Though a bit disheveled, she looked much more spirited. Come eat. The food's getting cold. Emily greeted warmly, deliberately seating Ethan next to Sophia. Once they sat, the two of them tacitly didn't say a word, just quietly ate. They both needed some time to rebuild their relationship. Emily, however, was very enthusiastic about serving Ethan, urging him to try this and then that. Try this. Emily put a piece of fish on his plate and said. Faced with Emily's enthusiasm, Ethan looked a little helpless and could only hastily say, That's enough. That's enough. Suddenly, Emily pointed at a bowl of sweet and sour spare ribs on the table. Ethan, come, Annie specially made these for you. Sophia said you usually like this dish. Then she turned the bowl toward him, making a motion as if to pick up a piece for Ethan. Ethan already had a lot of food in his bowl, but embarrassed to refuse, he had to extend the bowl. All right, Annie, it's really enough. The spare ribs taste as always a bit sweeter, This dish is indeed something I used to eat often after marriage in my past life. Besides this, there were sweet and sour pork and gobera and other. Thinking that, Ethan suddenly stopped. He didn't continue shoveling rice in his bowl, but turned to look at Sophia. Sophia, when did I ever say I usually like to eat this dish? I'm not Mari. Ethan didn't continue, but he could tell Sophia understood. The hand with the chopsticks in Sophia's grip also froze. She looked at Ethan in disbelief, not expecting that he had also been reborn. The atmosphere at the dining table suddenly became awkward, and Daniel and Emily exchanged a puzzled glance, not understanding what kind of silent game these two kids were playing. What's wrong, Ethan? Do you not like it? Emily asked, puzzled. I don't have a nanny. I quite like eating it. Ethan withdrew his gaze and replied. At this point, Ethan's mind was no longer on the meal. The rest of dinner passed in an awkward atmosphere. After the meal, Ethan didn't linger. He made an excuse and said he had to leave. He knew Sophia would surely come after him, so he waited by the car for a moment. Soon, footsteps sounded behind him. Ethan, what you just said at the table, what did you mean? Sophia ran over, panting as she spoke. Ethan turned to face Sophia, expressionless, and said, You know what I meant. I don't need to explain. Before we were married, I never ate sweet and sour ribs in front of you, did I? Ethan's eyes were icy cold now, completely different from the gentle look he'd had in the bedroom earlier. He finally understood why this life Sophia was different from the last. She, too, had been reborn. He had thought he was facing a different Sophia, but instead he was facing a Sophia who regretted and admitted her mistake. Sophia opened her mouth, seeming to want to say something. Sophia, Ethan interrupted. Let's not continue. Sophia's heart stopped for a moment. She couldn't believe what she had heard. What did you say? What do you mean? She suddenly stepped forward and grabbed Ethan's arm, demanding an explanation. Ethan gently freed his hand from hers and said calmly, I mean it literally. Let's leave it like this. Tears fell from Sophia uncontrollably. She clutched Ethan's hand tightly, unwilling to let go. I know I treated you badly before, but this time I'm sincere. Could you please give me another chance? We could forget everything from before and start over. Hearing that, Ethan stopped struggling and looked at Sophia calmly, at the wife he had spent 60 years with. You clearly had so many chances to change before. Why wait until now? In our last life, we were together for 60 years. You had so many opportunities. Why did you have to wait until now to lower yourself once? The grip in Sophia's hand gradually loosened, but she still held on to him. Ethan did not stop. He continued, When I was 35, I complained to you that the company's performance was poor, and what if it went bankrupt someday? You replied perfunctorily, then get a job. Actually, all I wanted then was to hear something to comfort me, because I was really under a lot of pressure. When I was 56, that year our daughter got married, and it was just the two of us at home. I asked if you wanted to go on a trip to relax. Coincidentally, I could leave the company to our son to give him some experience. You said you didn't want to go. Then, as our wedding anniversary approached, you said you wanted to see Dolly because you saw many people taking wedding photos by Uri and said our wedding photos weren't taken well. I had to push back all my work and accompany you. And after we'd taken just 2 pictures, you said you were too old and ugly and refused to continue. Ethan listed, one by one, the grievances he had suffered in that past marriage. With each thing he said, Sophia's hand weakened a little more. When I was 85, I was lying in a hospital bed, and before I wanted to hear you say you loved me. What happened? In the end, I never even saw you bow your head for me once to grant my last wish. Those final words landed in Sophia's heart like a judge's gavel. She wanted to argue but didn't know how to explain. She could only sob chokingly while clutching Ethan's hand and refusing to let go. I'm sorry. I really know I was wrong, Sophia said, trembling, her voice full of remorse and pain. Can you give me one more chance? Seeing this, Ethan gently freed the hand she had grabbed and said, All right, then I'll ask you this. When you were 38, on our 13th wedding anniversary, which restaurant did we have dinner at that day? Sophia froze. For a moment, she truly couldn't remember which restaurant it had been. Her mind was in chaos, and she couldn't recall anything. Ethan didn't press her further. Instead, he relaxed the condition and said, "You don't have to rush to remember. It's fine if you answer me later when it comes back to you." After saying that, he turned, opened the car door, and got in the car while Sophia watched. "If you can't remember, then let's leave it at that." Having said those words, Ethan started the car and drove away from the Taylor family's villa, leaving Sophia standing alone in the spot. After parking in the underground garage, Ethan didn't go home right away. He sat in the car and smoked. He rarely smoked. One pack lasted him a month. After marrying Sophia in his previous life, he had even quit smoking, but today he finished the half pack left in the car. As he smoked, he recalled their wedding anniversary when he was 38. The company was going through a transformation and was at risk of bankruptcy if anything went wrong. During that time, Ethan was living at the office. On the anniversary, he was on a business trip out of town and rushed back that night, coming straight home without resting. At home, Sophia was lying on the living room sofa stewing because he was 2 hours later than he had promised to be home. He didn't get back until almost 11, which ruined everything Sophia had planned. Ethan tried to console her and suggested going out for a late-night snack. Sophia didn't appreciate it. She stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. Ethan didn't get angry either. He fixed dinner with 2 packets of foreign instant noodles. After finishing his cigarette, Ethan didn't get out of the car immediately. He sat a while longer before going home. George and Margaret smelled the smoke on him when he arrived, but they tacitly kept silent, knowing Ethan needed his space. Several days passed like that. Neither of them contacted the other. Ethan continued to eat, work, and sleep as usual, though he kept checking his phone from time to time. It wasn't until late afternoon, just before getting off work, that Ethan suddenly received a call from the front desk downstairs. "Hello? What's up?" "Hello, Mr. Ethan. Miss Sophia is downstairs asking if you're free today," Mia Clark said, sounding noticeably shocked. Ethan was also a little surprised. He hadn't expected Sophia to ask him in person at the front desk whether he was free, instead of just sending a message. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Then tell her." Ethan suddenly stopped, then changed his mind. "Forget it. Have her wait downstairs for a bit. I'll come down in a moment." "Okay." After getting the reply, the front desk hung up. Ethan roughly tidied himself up and went downstairs. Coming out of the elevator area, Ethan's eyes met Sophia's at once. She was sitting on the sofa looking in his direction. Seeing this, Sophia hurriedly stood, smoothed her clothes, and waited for him to walk over. "What's the matter?" Ethan asked. Sophia unconsciously tugged at her shoulder bag strap. "It's, Sophia faltered, a little afraid to speak. "I don't remember. I don't think we went to a restaurant." Ethan smiled knowingly. He was sure Sophia did remember. She was just embarrassed to admit that she had been mad at her husband on their anniversary and had made him eat foreign instant noodles alone. "So what did I eat?" Ethan pressed. Sophia puffed her cheeks and let out a muffled hum, mustering up the courage to speak. "I know you're still mad at me. That day, I shouldn't have lost my temper with you, and I definitely shouldn't have made you eat foreign instant noodles." And then Ethan asked again. Sophia knew that the key to Ethan bringing this up wasn't whether he remembered, but how to stop her from staying angry. Today is our wedding anniversary. Do you want to go out for dinner or something? I booked a table. It took me several days to get a reservation." Sophia looked into Ethan's eyes and asked tentatively, "Where?" Ethan asked briefly. "She knew in Avenue. Voul." Sophia didn't argue. She just nodded lightly. Ethan frowned, looking troubled and somewhat reluctant. "What's wrong? Don't want to go? Then we can pick somewhere else," Sophia said. Ethan shook his head. "Forget it. Let's just go to XIN Rome G." With that, he was about to drive. Seeing this, Sophia hurriedly grabbed Ethan and said anxiously, "Don't say forget it. If you don't like it, just tell me. It's no big deal to choose another place." Ethan sighed and turned to explain, "It's nothing. I just went to Enai Tower yesterday, and I feel like going to another one today would be a bit much. Besides, haven't you been planning this for several days?" Hearing that reason, Sophia immediately became unwilling. After all, Ethan had always indulged her in his previous life, and even now he had to accommodate her to go to a restaurant he didn't particularly like. If you don't want to go, then pick another place. It's fine, no need to change. I didn't eat much last time. I mostly want to talk to people. But, really, it's nothing. No need to change. Ethan cut her off. I really want to go. Seeing Ethan so adamant, Sophia didn't bring up changing restaurants again and quietly followed him down to the underground parking. They didn't speak on the way to the restaurant. Sophia sat in the front passenger seat, opened her mouth several times but made no sound, unsure of what to say. At the restaurant, after showing the reservation, Sophia followed the waiter to the private room. They didn't speak a word until after they'd finished ordering. The two of them acted like a couple in the middle of a Cold War. Even when the waiter brought all the dishes, they ate in silence. Seeing Ethan's listless demeanor, Sophia felt embarrassed to bring up the rest of the plans. So after finishing quickly, she went with Ethan back to the parking lot. When they reached the car, Sophia resignedly got into the front passenger seat, ready to end this terrible wedding anniversary. Ethan fastened his seatbelt, turned on CarPlay, and casually asked, "Which cinema are we going to?" Sophia froze for a moment, then reacted and, sounding both aggrieved and a little secretly pleased, said, "Not the cinema. Where to then? Just find a pedestrian street and stroll around. How about Namluoguxiang?" All right. Namluoguxiang at night was bustling with people coming and going. The two walked side by side, yet kept a subtle distance. Under the streetlights, their shadows sometimes overlapped, sometimes separated. Sophia looked at Ethan's profile. Seeing he didn't pull away, she mustered up the courage and edged closer bit by bit. In the night, it was unclear who touched whose hand first. First tentative, then fingers interlaced. They walked like that for a while, neither letting go, wandered around, and eventually reached the parking lot. Sophia whispered, "Are you still mad at me?" "Still mad," Ethan answered bluntly. Sophia's expression dimmed for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Then what would make you not mad at me?" "Depend on my mood. When will you be in a good mood?" "Seeing you makes me feel bad." Sophia immediately tapped Ethan upon hearing that, feigning anger as she shouted, "What do you mean? You dislike me that much?" As soon as the words left her mouth, Sophia's tone softened. "Then I'll try to bother you less from now on." "No need." Ethan's tone suddenly became very gentle. "If I can't see you, I'll feel even worse." A faint blush quickly rose on Sophia's face as she mumbled softly, "Really? Fake." Sophia, hearing this, gave Ethan another pat and whimpered a little, feeling wronged. "Ethan, please don't be mad, okay?" she said as she burrowed into Ethan's arms. "No, okay." Sophia gave Ethan's body another little shake. "No, husband." That shy, coquettish address made Ethan shiver all over, but he still kept his expression tense and said, "Say it one more time." Sophia's face went even redder. She buried her head in Ethan's chest and softly repeated, "Hubby, I know I was wrong. Will you forgive me? I'll be good from now on. I won't make you angry anymore." "Depends," he said. "I'm in a better mood today." Sophia hugged Ethan even tighter, and Ethan reached out to pull Sophia into his arms. In that moment, all the barriers and misunderstandings seemed to vanish, leaving only a reconciled couple. Sophia raised her head to look at Ethan, tears glinting in her eyes. Ethan lowered his and slowly kissed her. After a moment, they separated, and Sophia spoke first. "Then you have to promise me from now on. If you're unhappy, tell me. I'll slowly change too." Ethan nodded. Sophia coquettishly winked and asked, "So when are we going to get our marriage certificate?" "Today is already over. Tomorrow," Ethan said without hesitation. "Tomorrow is Saturday," Sophia reminded. "Then Monday. I'll just tell my parents and them." "Okay." Epilogue. In 2085, after handling Ethan's funeral together, Sophia and her son Dylan and daughter Chloe prepared to go to bed. Sophia hadn't slept much for several days, or slept very lightly, waking up soon after lying down. But with the funeral finally over, she could at last lie down properly and still couldn't fall asleep. She reached for the empty other half of the bed. The cold touch felt like a knife to her heart. Finally, Sophia got up and took out a suit Ethan often wore from deep in the wardrobe. Many of Ethan's belongings had been burned according to custom, and the children, fearing Sophia would be reminded by objects, didn't know she'd hidden this suit. Sophia hugged the clothes to her chest, buried her face in the collar, and smelling the familiar scent of the fabric, she soon fell asleep. A few days later, worried about their mother, Chloe returned home and, seeing that her mother had been quite stable lately, finally felt relieved. Around 10 p.m., Chloe asked her brother, "Bro, has Mom been going to bed early these past few days? Has she not been waking up at night?" Dylan nodded and said, "Yeah, Mom's probably been worn out." After speaking, Dylan got up and stretched. His joints cracked. He was no longer young and couldn't stay up too late. "All right, go to bed early. You still have to rush back in the morning." "Okay." Chloe got up as well. "I'll go check on Mom, then I'll go to sleep." Chloe gently opened their mother's bedroom door. She didn't turn on the light, but instead switched on her flashlight and carefully walked to the bedside. Strangely, after listening for a while, she couldn't hear the breathing sounds one would expect from someone asleep. Panicking, she turned the light on and called Mom a couple times, but Sophia didn't respond. Unable to believe it, Chloe shook her mother's body with her hands and then realized her mother's body was already cold. Sophia left this world quietly, clutching Ethan's suit that had been soaked with her tears. A peaceful smile rested on her face, as if in the final moment of life, she had finally been reunited with the one she loved. With a flash of white light, Sophia found herself reborn at 25, sitting in the familiar villa living room, with Ethan himself sitting opposite her. The moment she saw 25-year-old Ethan, Sophia's tears instantly sprang to her eyes. She hurriedly turned her head, not wanting Ethan to see her crying. All the regrets from her last life, she resolved she would make up for in this one.